And welcome back to Washington Commanders Insider. Today, we are talking about what the Washington Commanders must fix in their Week 2 preseason matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to hit that subscribe button, just like Jayden Daniels is going to be hitting Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel, Zach Ertz, and many others for multiple touchdowns this upcoming season. And so in exchange for hitting that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Washington Commanders. And so make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Washington Commanders Insider family as we talk nothing but Washington Commanders football. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it as we're talking about what the Washington Commanders must fix in Week 2 of preseason football against the Cincinnati Bengals. And so, look, last week against the New England Patriots, that was a rough game for the Washington Commanders as they got beat 48-18. And I just think that there are definitely some key insights from that game that the Commanders need to clean up moving forward, not just for this game against the Bengals, but it is going to be certainly impactful for their season ahead. So the first major thing that the Commanders will need to tighten up is they are going to have to eliminate the penalties. I think that that is the first major key here, because when you look at this last game against the Patriots, 13 penalties for 98 yards versus the Patriots 2 penalties for 15 yards. And so I don't care what stage of the season you're in. If you have a lot of penalties like that, you are definitely going to hurt your chances of winning. And when you're talking about these penalties, these are just little mental mistakes that the Commanders made that they have got to tighten up. And because we know that this is something that can certainly cost you down the line if you do not tighten these things up. And so that is point number one. The Commanders are going to have to clean that up and not beat themselves there. And the next thing that the Commanders are going to have to tighten up is the turnovers. In this last game against the Patriots, they lost the turnover battle 2-1. And so just looking back to just the end of the season for the Commanders last season, in week number 16 against the Eagles, they had 5 turnovers. In the NFC Championship game, they had 4 turnovers. And so that's 9 turnovers against last year's Super Bowl champions. And in that NFC Championship game with those 4 turnovers, that led to 28 points. And so I think that that is something that has to be just on the bulletin board every time the Commanders go to step out there, because not taking anything away from the Eagles and what they did there, but you really have to look at that thing and go, look, we have got to tighten up on the turnovers, because you don't want to end the game, in the season, and say to yourselves, man, did we really get beat, or did we beat ourselves? And so those two things with the penalties and the turnovers are something that the Commanders must clean up here on Monday night versus the Cincinnati Bengals. And so the next thing that the Washington Commanders are going to have to tighten up is just they're going to have to play a lot better collectively as units. And so I'm talking about offense, defense, special teams as well, because when you go out first play and you give up a kickoff return, that is not a good sign. And so you've got to be able to clean up everything and just be in unison really on all 3 phases. And so, mainly want to focus here on special teams. And so just making teams really pay for when we do have them take the football and put it into play. And so just not going for the touchbacks, but actually, we're kicking it, they're receiving it, and we're coming down and we're covering things. And so we're staying disciplined, in our pursuit lanes and things like that, and really just minimizing the amount of yards that they are going to get on the kickoff returns and the punt returns, because we know in football, it comes down to yards. And so you want to play the field position defensively as well. You want to be able to flip the field and get it to your offense to where they have the least amount of field to go to score. And then also too, you want to make sure that you get the opposing offense to really operate on your terms, because if you're constantly, in their field position and things like that, and they can't move the football, this is how you can really seize the momentum in football games. And so this is a great time to start to build on those habits here. And so hopefully this team is in sync on all 3 phases here. And so the next thing that I think that the Commanders are going to need to fix, And really, I think just really put an emphasis on here is defensively. I think that they're going to have to be a lot better with the run fits and things like that. And so we heard Joe Wood Jr., we've heard Dan Quinn say at times they liked what they saw, and then there were times that they didn't like what they saw. And so, just going back to last season, that was definitely one of the things that the Washington Commanders really struggled at, was stopping the run. And so when you look at what the Patriots were able to do, they led the game in rushing 153 to 101. But I think that the key stat out of that is their yards per rush was 4.9. 10 yards to get to the first down marker, and 4.9 is what they averaged. That is not very good. And so the Commanders defense, I get it. They were going against the ones. I know that we are definitely in an evaluation process that is across the NFL. I get all of that, but you want to make sure that you just set the principles here. And this is just like the turnovers. This is one of those ones that just has to be on the bulletin board every time, is that, look, we have got to minimize the amount of yards that teams get rushing the football. I think that that is something that you have got to cut down. This just dates back to what happened last season here. And so hopefully this team can just get a small win there, whether it's cutting down the overall rushing yards, but more importantly, if you can cut down the averages to where, okay, now they're getting 3.9 a carry, or it's at 4. You just want to get those little wins, and hopefully you get a chance to stack those up. And so that's another thing that I think the Commanders are certainly going to have to fix here. And then also too, defensively, I think that this is a great chance for this team to step up at the linebacker position. I think that, Joe Wood Jr. and Dan Quinn are very much trying to find a linebacker that can maybe go out there and run some of these 3 linebacker sets. I think that the Washington Commanders want to do that. I think that Kane Madrano is going to have a chance to step up like that. We'll see what happens with Duke Riley Jr. if he's able to step up as well. We'll talk a little bit more about that on the next show as far as individuals to watch. But I think that the linebackers, are going to be very important here in this game as far as run fits, getting there, that interior of the defensive line. We'll see if they can stop the run, and also to just generate some natural pressures without actually going out there and calling a blitz. And so defensively, these are the things that the Washington Commanders are going to have to tighten up against the Bengals. And so the next thing that the Commanders are going to have to definitely take a look at here is just from the wide receiving group. You're going to have to try to figure out exactly what you have. And so we have talked about Terry McLaurin. We've talked about Deebo Samuel. And certainly I think that everybody that watches this team probably expects for these guys to have great seasons. And I'm right there with you. I think that Terry McLaurin, even though, he's just now getting off the PUP list, we'll see what happens with him, trending towards playing in week 1. I do think that, look, he's the pro's pro. This guy has shown up during the bad times. He's shown up during the good times. And so same with Deebo Samuel. He's been doing it. He seems to be on the same page right now with Jayden Daniels. But I just think that after those 2 receivers, it's what's next. And so I love Noah Brown. I think that he definitely can be a solid contributor for us. He showed that last season, but the injury concerns now going into this thing and just the opportunities that are there, somebody's going to have to step up. And I'm not sure that we necessarily saw what we wanted to see in preseason game number 1. And so this is where, I think players like Jalen Lane, they're going to have the opportunity to show it here in the game, because I thought that we saw some great stuff from Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. But it's time that we see that now, hopefully from Jalen Lane in this next game. Hopefully he's a bit more comfortable out there. Hopefully, the passes aren't selling over his head and things like that. But I think that this is a real chance to get him going and really get somebody established to step up there in that wide receiver 3 role possibly, because yes, you have Noah Brown, but if he gets injured or goes down like last season, you need somebody that you can depend on. And you also need to find out from a personnel standpoint what you can do from a situational standpoint, because I do think that that's probably where Cliff Kingsbury was coming from in his press conference a couple days ago, where he's saying, look, it's getting late. We need to get everybody out there, on the grass and see what we have. We need to get everybody gelling. And so this is a terrific time to see exactly what Jalen Lane can do along with Luke McCaffrey, because Luke McCaffrey, this last game out, if you were not familiar with what happened there, he was under the weather. And so hopefully, he's ready to rock and roll here in this game. And so I do think that he will have a major opportunity to step up here in week number 2. And so hopefully he and Jalen Lane can step it up. And then also you want to pay attention to, I think, an undrafted free agent here in Ja'Cory Brooks. I think that he's looked very good. And I think that he has a real chance to maybe jump up the chart a little bit here, along with a guy like Michael Gallup. And so, this wide receiving core, aside from Terry McLaurin and then also to Deebo Samuel, somebody else is going to need to step up because, defensively, they're going to get a lot of attention. And you just want to be able to go, okay, you take those guys away, I can go here. This guy's dependable in this area. So it's all about finding that type of rhythm here. And so hopefully we see that in week number 2 against the Bengals. And then next, I think from the offensive line, we want to see some more with them. I thought that I was impressed, especially with Josh Conley Jr. And I've said this, a couple times here on the show. This guy's a gamer. I think that he's going to be just fine. I can't wait until he gets out there, against Stewart from Cincinnati, the Bengals or whatnot. And so I want to see what he's going to do against that Cincinnati defense. And just is he able to go out there, execute his principles and things like that, because I'm sure they're going to try to run some stuff, at him to try to, fool him and stuff like that. But he looked very good in that first week of preseason play. And also too, we know that pass protection is going to be a premium for this team, because I do think that that is the way that teams are going to try to come after Jayden Daniels. And that's going to lead me to the next point here, is that Jayden Daniels and that offense is going to play a couple series. And so going back to what Dan Quinn said, that he said, look, don't go and take an extended popcorn break, but these guys are going to get some reps. And so, let's see if they allow Jayden Daniels to turn the football loose. And if they do, what is the pass protection going to look like, along with opening up the running lanes too? Because I do think that as much as we talk about Jayden Daniels and his ability to get the football down the field, this team is very much just built to run the football. I think that when they run the football, they are very successful there, because you're talking about really dominating the time of possession. You're keeping defenses on the field, wearing them down. And then also too, as you go along, and I'm counting that this team gets into the playoff run again, you're keeping elite quarterbacks on the sideline there. And so how do you do that? Running the football, especially when, the weather's bad outside and stuff like that. It becomes maybe a little bit more difficult to get the ball down the field. And so you need to be able to run the football. And so this is a great chance for that offensive line to really establish an identity. So just thinking back in the days where we talk about the Hogs and stuff like that. And so, no, I'm not saying our offensive line is that, but I'm trying to just, set the similarity out there that you want to make sure that you get an identity. And how do you do that? This is a great way to do it in preseason football. And so you guys let me know in the comments, what are you guys thinking? What are you guys looking for the Washington Commanders to fix the most? Is it fixing the turnovers that we've definitely had, not just in this first game, but we've had that in the past? Last season, is it something here where you want to see the penalties cut down? Which I've said this, it doesn't matter in what stage of the season you're playing in. If you turn the football over and then also too, you have the penalties, you're just not going to win a lot of games. Is it the defense? Are you looking forward to seeing what these run fits are going to do? Are you looking forward to seeing a possible player like Kane Madrano or somebody else kind of step up there defensively? Maybe we see some more on that interior line. And then let me know what you guys are thinking with this offensive line. I talked about Josh Conley Jr. Remember Brandon Coleman, he's going to be out. And so, this is a little tough situation, because we do have, I believe, about 3 weeks until the opener against the Giants. And so this is a time for somebody to step up into that space right now. And also too, this is a time where you can take this moment and you can grow from this, because there's going to be those type of tough situations during the seasons where you're going to have players that are out and stuff like that, or during the season where you're going to have players out and you need them to be able to step up, communicate, and get things done. And so I think that that's going to be key here. And then next, just talking about these wide receivers. And so again, I think that Noah Brown is certainly going to be a contributor, but he's been injured. He got injured last season. And if he's out and he's not able to play, for the duration of the season, and you don't get, a lot of games, you got to find somebody else that can step up there. And you get a chance now in this preseason game to see, can it be Jalen Lane? Can he be versatile like we've talked about and like we've seen here in the camp? Is it Luke McCaffrey? Is he truly ready to step into a bigger role for this team? Or is it going to be one of these undrafted undrafted players like Ja'Cory Brooks? Could it be a guy that was mentioned like KJ Osborne? Remember Dan Quinn talking about his speed and his ability to make plays in the special teams. And then lastly, bottom line, this team's got to play better on all three phases. And so that means that just from the special teams game, we got to play a lot better than we did in that first game. And so you guys let me know in the comments what you're thinking. And as we always say, look, go Commanders, and I will see you guys in the next one. All right, peace.